Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. Today I want to talk about risers and transitioning effects. They're a very important part of your song and the song structure, making sure that it flows nicely. And they're often overlooked and they're kind of like an afterthought, but I wanted to go through some of the effects that I use to kind of transition, not only from section to section, but also kind of in the same section, using a few risers, using a few cool sounds that can add tension to a specific part of a track. So without further ado, let's get right into that. Alright, so what I have here is a project that I'm working on. It's a project that I started here, so I haven't been working on it for too long. But it's already kind of growing nicely, and the main reason for that is that I'm using a lot more transitional effects than I would usually do. So as you can see, almost all the effects here are like transitions and stuff like that. Rising effects, all of these are either risers or downlifters. We have stuff over here, but also in the leads, some of these lead sounds, you could also classify them as kind of a riser sound. And I'll go into why I keep them in here or in there in a little bit, but it mostly has to do with the fact that this sounds here, for example, we can see, if we go to the MIDI clip here, if I play this, you can hear that it's almost adding a little bit of tension at the start of the sound, but then because we're playing another MIDI clip here, it's kind of also has the function of a lead sound. That's why it's going into the lead sound section and not just in the effects. So I'll start with these and kind of let you know what they sound like. I want to use this video to kind of give you inspiration for what they do. So I'll play them in the track. It's going to be a little bit of a pause in here because I'm using a lot of plugins in this track, so there's a little bit of a delay. Something like that adds a lot of tension. I hope I can compensate for the delay, but I think it will be alright. You kind of get the idea. We have this chord here being played and slowly we're opening up the filter so that we have some tension being created. Now the patch itself is not really important, but if you want to take a look at it, it should just be a few saw waves, and as you can see we have an envelope there going through an hyper and the compressor, and then obviously the filtering is done here in this EQ. And we're also changing the volume so that the volume becomes louder here. So that's a little bit more of a mixing thing, but mainly for the sound design, what you want is a few more notes than usual. You want a big chord stab almost. So here we have 5 notes, and then you just want a few saw waves per note with a lot of voices. So the next one is kind of doing the same thing, where we have a lead sound here playing something. So we have this little fill lead in here, which I'll also play in the track. So that sits in the track very nicely. But then it's being used as a riser once again. Same principle, just a filter, a low pass filter going up and adding tension in the same way we had this other one do. So on its own, it sounds like this. There are a lot of other risers effects with this as well. So it's a little bit hard to distinguish it, but this is it on its own. Just a little riser effect there. Again, this adds tension to your sound, and without it, it doesn't really sound as nice. And it might be just a little bit of a background element. As you can hear, there's other things happening over top of them, so it sits in the background, but it adds that tension that you want to your track. I have another few. I mainly have this noise one, which repeats every 8 bars. So it starts off as a downlifter, and it kind of brings in the energy, then goes down and gets the suspense, and then by going back up you get that tension, and finally the release when it opens up and we go into the next section. So that's a cool way to both add a cool effect here on the part I would normally not have a lot of things going on. I did layer it with a cool sound as well, but this obviously still is coming through and is adding energy to that section of the track. But then we also use it as a riser into the next section. Layered with that are 2 types of saw wave risers. We have the first one here. Just going up in pitch and not really doing a lot of special stuff other than that gate. And then we have a version without the gate as well. And I'm switching between them to keep it interesting. So what you can do is, for example, make one riser and then keep it as a patch and then make a slight edit. For example, here we obviously have the one with the gated effect and without the gated effect. And that slight difference can already make it a lot more interesting than just having the same sound repeat over and over again. What I also suggest is just having a sample pack full of rising effects that are very nice. I was watching somebody from my Discord channel, Boom Boom Basa, who also does live streams and stuff like that, and he used the psychedelic intelligence pack here, which is a new sample pack that I bought. And this one comes with, as you can see, a whole bunch of different effects and a whole bunch of different risers, which is very useful as well. So that's something he recommended for me, and I've been using it in this track quite a bit. As you can see, here is one of them. I'll have a quick play of that so you can hear what it sounds like. Now this is something that is fairly easy. These kind of plugs, you just have a saw plug and you pitch it up, and it's not really something that's very complicated to make, but just having it as a sample and being able to drag it in there is so useful, because then you don't have to spend, you know, those 5 minutes making the sound, and you can just drag it in there, make sure that it fits the mix, and then move on to the next bit. And same for all of these other things that we have. I have these samples here, which are just a bit of white noise. Now, having a bit of white noise, any synthesizer can do that, but just having a Cashmere sample do that, and already having, you know, the right volume, stuff like that. The only thing I do is put on a filter to get an extra tone out of it. And then obviously with the echo and the reverb on there, delay and reverb, obviously helps it create a space around it, and that helps also the transition as well. But having those samples already pre-made, ready to go is really helpful, so that you can just drag it in there and you don't have to worry about all those kind of tedious sound design things that are kind of sitting in the background. So stuff like that is very helpful, and I definitely recommend you take a look at your tracks and see if there's enough transitional stuff in there and if there's enough stuff happening. And if not, then add some more transitions. I generally now, with this project, what I want to aim for is have at least 1 or 2 things going from every 8 bar to every 8 bar. So like every 8 bars, there's going to be a transition to something new, either if it's one of these smaller effects, or maybe if it's something bigger, I'll create a cool big effect like we have here. For example, if I solo these 2 things here, you can hear there's a lot going on here. Also together with this thing and this. So there's a lot of risers all put together, and they kind of create that always a rising effect that sits well in the track. Those are generally reserved for more bigger changes. So here we're going from a very high energy drop part to almost only the kick and bass. So as you can see, a lot of the drums are no longer there and stuff like that. So in that case, what I tend to do is have, you know, these big samples, but otherwise I would generally have something very small that just adds a little bit of extra flair to it, extra energy, extra, you know, tension. And that can really help put your track together and make it stand out a little bit more, because there's a little bit more of a background element that helps it drive forward. So that's what I wanted to talk about today. I hope you enjoyed this kind of tip. It's not really, you know, showing off a technique, but maybe something just to consider for your track. If you want me to do more of these kind of things, then let me know. I'll be happy to do those. But that's going to be it for today. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, then leave a like. And if you're new here, subscribe. And I hope to see you next time. Bye bye.